Right, so this is a quick demonstration video of some of the basics of digital painting that we'll be going through. So I've started up Photoshop, and the first thing I'm going to do is to make sure that this tab over here is set to painting. There's lots of different modes that Photoshop can be in that arrange the user interface in different ways, but we're going to go for painting because we're largely going to do things that involve digital painting. You may see some of this tool set shift around as you do that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do then is make a new document. So we're going to go up to File, New, and here's how where we specify how big the document's going to be. I would suggest for our first bit of a test is to make one that's 1600 by 900, 16:9 ratio image, widescreen. Make sure that's set to pixels and not inches or centimeters or something like that. And the background color can be white. And there we go, that's created a new document that size. So real basics to start off with then. We're going to be doing a bit of painting, so what we're going to need is the paintbrush here, that icon there. And we should all have our Mac on tablets plugged in, so if I was to hover around the cursor around the document, you see it's got a brush size. If that brush circle isn't displayed, you can turn it on and off with caps lock, like that, off, on. If I turn it off, it turns to a little crosshair like that. But we want to see the brush size. So if I was to paint around with that, it's painting with that colour there. You see the colour there in the little set foreground and background boxes. If I wanted to change that colour, I could click on that box and select the colour. Let's do it right, let's do it correctly this time. And go OK, and now I'm painting in that sort of orangey brown colour. You'll notice that with my brush, my Wacom pad plugged in, I've got a bit of pressure sensitivity, so if I lightly draw a line, it's quite a thin line, but if I was to push down now, you can see it's got a fat line, so you've got some degree of pressure sensitivity going on with this brush. If it's not on, you could try turning that on there. That's pressure sensitivity on and off, there like that. Really useful buttons, hotkeys, I find, are the square brackets. The left square bracket makes the brush go smaller. The right square bracket makes it go bigger. So it's the button with that on it, square bracket. Bigger, smaller. If you're ever in a different tool, so the text tool, and you want to get back to the brush tool, you can just press B, and that'll get you back to the brush tool. Someone's actually thought of that. B for brush. Other really useful things I find are the Alt key. If I'm in brush mode and I press the Alt key, you'll see that the cursor changes to a little like a little dropping pipette, isn't it? If I was to click on that with the pen, it'll change whatever pixel it selects to be your foreground color. So there it's grey, there it's kind of orange, there it's white, all by holding down the Alt key. I find that incredibly useful when doing digital painting. If I wanted to, let's just clear it off for a second. Select a little dark color. You see at the moment when I paint, the opacity is 100%, and the way you can change opacity is up here, but you can see it's a real pain to have to keep going up to here and slide this slider around. So that's 70% opacity, 26% opacity. So what we can do is we can actually type directly into the keypad. If I was to type just press 5, it would automatically fill in 50, and I have a 50% opacity brush. If I was to type in 1, it would fill in the rest and give me a 10% opacity. If I wanted 90, I'd press 9. And if I wanted 100, I'd actually press 0. You can't have a zero opacity brush, so zero would give me 100. You can of course do like fractional points in between, like 35 or 56, but it's a great way of being able to change the opacity without having to get hold of the mouse, go up here, etc. Now, probably the most useful button in the world is the save function. So the way you'd save a document is like this: you go File and Save As. The first time you'd have to do it, it will do Save As anyway. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to save my document as Photoshop .psd, and anytime in the future if I want to save it, I can just press Control S and that will save the document again. I can go up here, of course, Control S. It does tell you what the hotkeys are for all these things up and down there. Okay, right. Another really useful function as well is layers. And here's your layers tab um, here. Now, if I was wanted to create a new layer, I'd go down here to this little turned over page icon. And you see it's made a little layer there. I can rename this layer, and what I can do then is I can paint on this layer, and it's totally separate from the rest of the background image. So I've got some squiggles there. If I was to hide the background with this little eye icon, and I can hide the new test layer as well. Yeah, it's all completely separate. That's kind of the great benefit of Photoshop and layers. Okay, okay, more useful things. I'll make another layer here, and what I'm going to do is show you the fill function. The fill function here is here, the little paint bucket. And if I was to click on this, it will then fill whatever the available area is on the new layer that I'm selected. So I click on that and it's filled the whole thing in. So it's quite a useful way of just starting again and being able to sort of paint some, fill in a whole layer of one single colour. Right, okay, so I'm going to just do some drawing over this top layer here. Probably the last few things I want to show you in this video are how to change the type of brush. You see there we've just got a standard round Photoshop brush. That's denoted by this thing up here. You see the kind of the little shape with 40 under it. If I click that drop down menu, I can now select any of the kind of the preset brushes. If I went for like something like that with a more sort of natural looking sort of tip to it, like a bit of charcoal or something, that gives me a different brush. Similarly, something like this give me a different effect again. So that's how you change your type of brush. Something I really need to show you as well is the undo function. If you were to go up to Window and click on History, you can see you've got a big long scrolling stack of the actions that you have applied to this document. And right down the bottom is the last action that we've done. If we were to start clicking backwards, we'd see that erases operations as we've done them. There's the paint bucket changes, etc., etc. So it's a great way of being able to go back into a real long stack of undos. Okay, so that just about rounds it up for the sort of absolute basics of digital painting. In the next video, we'll move on to something a bit more specific to do with drawing.